Let's begin with you. What was so fascinating about your poll is that it was of rural voters, mainly Republican, in Pennsylvania. And you went to, and I thought it was a brilliant move, you went to actually a Republican polling firm just to make sure the results were straight up. What did you find?
Yes, I did, and it was only possible to run this poll, I should note, by the benefits of a donor who stepped up to fund the cost. And what I found on it was that, number one, I mean, at 57%, Republicans said they would be less likely to support, that these Republican districts would be less likely to support members that want to defund or privatize the USPS. So that's a really interesting finding, and one that I think GOP members should probably note, and probably did when they were looking at that House vote and are eyeing potential action in the Senate. And number two, it's a really notable finding because 57% in the polarized environment we're in a swing district is a robust majority. But in a district that's 56, in a survey where 56% of the respondents are Republicans, that's the equivalent of like 90%, right? So it really means the post office is deeply popular. People don't want to see it defunded, and they don't want to see it privatized.
You know, Paul Rieckhoff, this is, to say ironic, it seems to be an understatement that Republicans are actually fighting right now to undermine the United States Postal Service. I remember in 2000, during the Bush-Gore recount debacle, I was going across the state of Florida, fighting for to make sure that every Republican vote was counted for George W. Bush. And our biggest battle ended up in Northwest Florida, my home district, making sure that all military ballots that had been cast and mailed in were counted. The military, I mean, the United States Postal Service, especially during an election, but throughout the year, every year, is a lifeline for so many service members to their friends and loved ones and families and young children back in the States and across the world. I mean, how do these cuts, how does this chaos impact our vets?
Tremendously, Joe. I mean, Trump's done some pretty stupid and damaging things. This one is epically stupid and damaging. About 100,000 veterans are employed at the post office. They make up about 15% of the overall workforce. About 60% of those veterans are also disabled. The Postal Service delivers medication, hundreds of thousands, millions of pieces of medication through the Department of Veterans Affairs to veterans all across the country. Our troops vote via the post office. So this cuts to the heart of America. It's an attack on our troops. It's actually an attack on our national defense. I mean, the only people celebrating this right now are our enemies. I mean, this is a losing political argument for Trump. It's a losing political argument for the Republicans, and it should be ended immediately. I think it's going to hurt us deeply. It's going to hurt us for a long time. And I think it's going to hurt him in swing states like Ohio and Florida and Pennsylvania, where he really needs to make headway right now. So it's damaging, and it's going to be long lasting, Joe.
I want to pick up on that point right there and bring it back to you, Rachel, the idea of how this post office fight could be damaging in states that the president really needs to win, and in particular Pennsylvania, where you just studied, and I was with the president last week when he went to his rather troll campaign move just outside Scranton. Their theory of the case of Pennsylvania is they feel like the Biden camp will do very well in a lot of the big cities. The Philly suburbs have really turned against Trump. So they need to really animate the sort of ex-urban and rural voters. What sort of impact are you seeing, beyond even the post office, but just in terms of where those vote, how those voters think about the president right now?
Well, I actually did, it was really strategic to choose Pennsylvania, 3 completely rural districts with no population that was suburban, urban. And, what I actually found was a pretty weak approval of the pandemic for his pandemic handling. So it does suggest some areas of softness. And this USPS issue is an area that could be exploited to offset that overall Trump enthusiasm that he does have out there. So it is, it's definitely their only path to victory is to exploit and enhance that rural ex-urban advantage. They're not going to be able to offset his negatives in the suburban urban areas because he's always is daily his own worst enemy in terms of kind of, calling women suburban housewives and just, always making gaffes that set them back in that regard. So it's a sound strategy, but I think that this poll, if you dig into the report on the Niskanen Center website, which I strongly urge you to do, it's really going to show that there are some exploitable weaknesses in that electorate. And these are voters we don't usually get to see because usually there's not enough of them in a standalone survey for us to really look at.
Paul, David Ignatius has a question for you. David.
I want to ask about a polling issue that clearly is one that Trump and his supporters think about a lot, and that is the idea that people, when they're asked questions by pollsters, don't tell the truth. They're embarrassed to say that they support Trump or Trump policies. It's argued that there was some of that happening in 2016. It's why the numbers for Hillary Clinton never captured the decline in her support. Do you see any evidence that people are not giving honest answers to pollsters when they ask about the 2020 race and Trump?
So yes, but not. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I would say yes. I'm not a polling expert, but I've got a pretty good feel for the country and talk to folks across the country in the military and the veterans community. And I think a lot of folks are not honest about their support for Trump. I mean, they're not honest about racism either until they go to the polls. So I think that's a long-standing problem with voters. But there's another issue that I want to touch on. Some people have said the post office is not profitable. And you hear the president talk about this a lot. You know what else isn't profitable? The Marine Corps, the Army, the Department of Defense, because we don't care if they're profitable. We care if they get the job done. And that's what the post office has to be thought about as well. The post office is not about profit. It should be about delivering what America needs. So this is about the heart of America, and it's another attack by Trump. I call him President Mayhem all the time. The only folks that this benefits is the folks who wish America harm. This rips our country apart, and it hurts our vets, our troops, and the entire fabric of our country.
Rachel, are there hidden Trump voters in 2020 like there were in 2016?
So what I was going to say is David's question are voters lying in polls? And if you look at this report, you'll see they are, but not in the way that he means. They lie because they know what they're actually answering when they're asked a question like, is Donald Trump doing a good job on the pandemic? Is they're answering for their team or their tribe. And so you really, the way I wrote this report, if you look at it, I wanted people to see the power of partisanship and polarization in response. And you can actually see that rural voters pretend they don't need the post office. And that really shows, if I'm answering for Trump as a Republican, I know that this poll is going to show, more than the actual objective reality of the pandemic. It's going to show that party allegiance. And so voters do lie to pollsters. But in terms of underweighted Trump support, there has not been a lot. We've done a lot of diagnostic work in the public opinion realm for that. And that is not one of the diagnosed major contributing factors to 2016. I actually have looked at that pretty robustly.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.